from all over Australia.
Yes.
Welcome everyone from all over Australia to our church service today.
Amen.
And I've been through some real struggles, difficult trials, and sometimes you feel like giving up and being discouraged. We can either do that, or we can drive us more to our knees to trust God
Yes,
more.
much better, yes.
We've got the choice.
Yes.
So I've been trying to do the latter, trying to, extend my trust in God more, and with troubles that come and difficulties often in our own minds. I mean, last time I spoke to you, I spoke about the topic. Now I'm trying to recall, what was it? How we not to involve ourselves with the politics of the world. Brother Tom Kennedy here from Perth, he shared me a good quote, and I want to begin with that. It comes from, well, I don't know where he shared it from, but I know it's the same one in Desire of Ages, page 509. And you can read it for homework, but I'll tell you what it says in brief. Basically, it says there that the multitudes in the religious world, many people are working to establish the kingdom of Christ on earth as an earthly kingdom. That's what they want. They want Jesus to be a ruler of the kingdoms of the world. That's what they expect. And they want him to rule by making laws enforced by human authority. They want to establish a kingdom like on this earth. And they seek to do it themselves even, to stand in the stead of Christ and make laws for humanity. And to establish such a kingdom also, it says, the Jews desired in the days of Christ. That's what they wanted. And they would have received Jesus had he been willing to establish an earthly kingdom. They would have received him instead of rejecting him, and to enforce the laws as the laws of God. And they were glad. That's what they wanted. And multitudes the same today. But Jesus has said, my kingdom is not of this world. And he would not accept an earthly throne. So we want to go on with those themes today and study about Christ and his way of working in the world so that we can follow. And we're also going to study about the conflict that Jesus had with the Pharisees and the Herodians. Both the Pharisees and the Herodians were seeking to establish the kingdom of God on earth, or an earthly kingdom as such. The Pharisees were more religious. The Herodians were more towards joining with the Romans to establish a kingdom, building the temple and things like this. So let us read in Revelation 12, verse 3, 4, and 5 for our beginning verses. And this is a prophecy of key prophecy in the center of Revelation. The center of the book. So it's one of the important points. And here we read in verse 3, Revelation 12, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. So this great red dragon is there. And notice halfway through verse 5 what he does. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Wanted to consume the child, the dragon. What a sight. And she brought forth a man-child. Did the dragon consume it? No, it says, who was to rule all nations with the rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. So it sounds like the dragon failed in his purpose to consume the child as soon as it was born. What a grotesque picture that is. In Great Controversy, page 438, it says the dragon primarily represents Satan. In its secondary sense, a symbol of pagan Rome. So it's Satan, and the agency Satan uses was pagan Rome in this case. So the great red dragon, a symbol of Rome. And the dragon is about to devour the child. We understand this child to be Christ. And in the Bible, we've all read the story of Herod, where he sought to destroy the children. He sought to destroy Christ as a child. And he had all those babies in Bethlehem murdered. The Roman soldiers came to Bethlehem and killed the little children in the hope to also kill Christ. But because of the warning of the angel, the parents of Jesus escaped with the child, fled to Egypt, a place away from Herod. Why did Herod feel so threatened by the birth of Jesus? Well, let's talk about Herod. Herod's father, by descent, was an Edomite, ancestor of Esau. And his ancestors had converted to Judaism. So Herod's ancestors, his father, his family, they became Jews. So Herod himself had been raised a Jew. And because his family had fostered political relations with Rome, Herod was appointed by the Senate of Rome as king of the Jews. Herod, this man. But because of his questionable Jewish heritage and the fact that Herod collaborated with Rome, Herod was not well liked by the Jewish population. Most of the Jews actually hated Herod. So Herod must have felt very insecure in his rule as king of the Jews, appointed by Rome. So when a babe was born in Bethlehem that was said to be the rightful king of the Jews, Herod, naturally, he felt threatened. Here is a usurper, come to take my throne. So he reacted with a slaughter of the innocent babies of Bethlehem. After Herod died, Mary and Joseph returned from Egypt, and they resided in Galilee. But the sons of Herod became rulers of the region as well. The son of Herod, I think his name was Antipas. He's known as Herod later in the Gospels. We'll talk about this second Herod as we go. Now, in the Gospel of Mark, we're going to talk a lot in the Gospel of Mark today and find out a lot in there about Jesus and his conflict with the Herodians. The Herodians were supporters of Herod, or this second Herod. And the Herodians are twice mentioned in the Gospel of Mark, two verses mentioning them. And I want to share both these verses. In both instances, the Pharisees combined their forces with the Herodians. The Pharisees were, in fact, the most bitter enemies of the Herodians. They hated the Herodians, but they were willing to combine with them against Jesus, which is the thing. Let's come to Mark chapter 3 and read about this. How these two enemies were combining against Jesus. In Mark chapter 3, we read the story. Let me give you a picture. Here Jesus heals the man in the synagogue in Galilee. I think it was Capernaum, if I'm right, in Galilee. And he heals him on the Sabbath day, which the Jews did not allow or accept. Jesus did not follow their rules. He heals the man, and then in verse 3, verse 6, and the Pharisees, this is the reaction of the Pharisees, and the Pharisees went forth and straightway, took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. They wanted to destroy Jesus. In the book Desire of Ages, page 538, it says about this, that the Pharisees tried to arouse the Herodians against Jesus. They tried to stir them up against Jesus. They represented Jesus as seeking to set up a rival kingdom to their kingdom, to the Herodian kingdom under Rome. And they consulted with them to destroy him. They tried to stir up the Romans against Jesus, and they represented him as trying to undermine their authority. That's what it says there, basically. So this is why they were working with the Herodians. The second instance of the Herodians is in Mark chapter 12, verse 13, and let's read that one. So sometimes we face opposition in the world, but it's nothing new because Jesus did the same. Here in Mark chapter 12, we're reading verse 13. And they send unto him, this is unto Jesus, this is the Pharisees, they're sending people. They send unto him certain of the Pharisees and of the Herodians to catch him in his words. So here, this time, the picture is in Judea. And the Pharisees, again, they're combining with their enemies. They're combining with the Herodians, attempting to catch Jesus in his words. And what do? And when they were come, they say unto him, Master, we know that thou art true and carest for no man, for thou regardest not the person of men, but teachest the way of God in the truth. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar or not? This is their question. Shall we give or shall we not give? But Jesus, he, knowing their hypocrisy, said unto them, Why tempt ye me? Bring me a penny, that I may see it. And they brought it. And he said unto them, Whose is the image and superscription? And they said unto him, Caesar's. And Jesus answering said unto them, Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they marveled at him. So their attempt to catch Jesus in his own words failed, because Jesus read their hearts like an open book. He knew their hypocrisy. He knew their attitude. If Jesus had said, yes, it is lawful to give tribute to Caesar, the Pharisees were ready to condemn Jesus to the people as a collaborator with Rome. You know, as bad as the publican. And if Jesus had said, no, it is not lawful to give tribute to Caesar, don't give tribute to Caesar, they would have condemned Jesus to the Herodians, who they'd brought as witnesses against Jesus. He was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. So what did Jesus do? He told them to bring forth the coin.
Yes.
And they could not deny Caesar's head on the coin. The coin belonged to the dominions of Caesar. So they could not condemn Jesus.
Yeah.
all he did was give it back to Caesar.
Mm.
Now let us compare the actions of Jesus with the actions of Herod. See, this story, we have the actions of Jesus, innocent, wonderful, harmed nobody in this showing of the coin. Let's compare this with the actions of Herod. Remembering in Mark chapter 6, okay, we want to go there. When it's written about Herod there, we're talking about Antipas, the son of the first Herod. The first Herod that killed the babies. Come to Mark chapter 6 and let's compare Jesus with Herod. Mark chapter 6. Verse 17, I want to compare the actions of the two.
Mm.
Verse 17, we're going to read from there. For Herod himself had sent forth and laid upon John. He captured John the Baptist, bound him in prison for Herodias' sake, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. So this Herod, this second Herod, had married a woman that was his brother's wife. It was an incestuous marriage, incest, if you like. And it was not a good thing. And John had sort of condemned him about this. And then it says, for John had said unto Herod, verse 18, it is not lawful for thee to have thy brother's wife. It's incest. Therefore Herodias, which was the woman, had a quarrel against John, against him, and would have killed John, but she could not. For Herod feared John. He feared John the Baptist, knowing that he was a just, righteous man and holy, and observed him. And when he heard him, he did many things and heard him gladly. So Herod sort of was realizing that John was a man of God. But now let's look at the scheme against Herod, against John, so it's to say against John the Baptist. And when it was a convenient day was come that Herod on his birthday made a supper to his lords, his high captains, his chief estates of Galilee. And when the daughter of the said Herodias came in and danced and pleased Herod and them that sat with him, the king said unto the damsel, ask me whatsoever thou wilt, and I will give it thee. And he sware unto her, whatsoever thou shalt ask of me, I will give it thee, unto half my kingdom. And she went forth and said unto her mother, what shall I ask? And she said, the head of John the Baptist. And she came in straightway with haste unto the king and asked, saying, I will that thou give me by and by in a charger the head of John the Baptist. And the king was exceedingly sorry, yet for his oath's sake, and for their sakes which sat with him, he would not reject her. And immediately the king sent an executioner and commanded his head to be brought, and he went and beheaded him in prison. This is the sad revelation. Verse 28, and brought his head in a charger and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to her mother. This is the sad picture of the death of John the Baptist. So you see the actions of Herod in contrast with the actions of Christ. And it's quite a contrast. Now let's compare it. I want to compare it in I've drew up a table here. If I can share my screen, I'm going to share it. And you'll see the contrast between the two share. Now, if I can enlarge this portion of the screen and turn that off. Now, how do I enlarge this? How do I enlarge it? Oh, that way. Okay. Yes, I want to compare the two. I hope you can see this on your screen. Can you see this?
Yes, yes.
This is the contrast of Jesus between Herod, the two. You notice the Pharisees and Herodians in the first, they sought to destroy Jesus, but they could not. They were unable to. Well, initially, the people were protecting Jesus, more or less. The same we see with Herodias. She sought to have John the Baptist killed, but she could not. And it is interesting when you read in Mark, when they come to Jesus, the Pharisees say to him, in a hypocritical manner, that Jesus had no fear of any man. Jesus had no regard for any man. He didn't fear to fear anyone. He told the truth as it was. We read the verse there in Mark 12, verse 14. In contrast, you see Herod, he had a fear of John. He knew he was a righteous man. So we have the opposite going on with Herod. When we compare Jesus with Herod, he was a man full of fear, and as we see further, guilt as he goes down, as we go down and compare him with Jesus. But Jesus had no fear of any man. And you notice the Herodians and the Pharisees, they used stratagem to catch Jesus. What they thought was his weak points. We'll catch him on his weak points, And Herodias the same. She used a stratagem to catch Herod in a weak moment. He was weak with drunkenness and lust. She caught him out. But you notice again the contrast that Jesus saw through their plot. That's the next point. He called out their hypocrisy. He called them hypocrites. He saw the plot. In contrast, Herod, he did not recognize the plot of Herodias. He was drunk. He was captivated by the beauty of Salome, his, the daughter of Herodias.
Yeah, stepdaughter.
Stepdaughter, was it? Yeah, whatever. And so you see, one recognized the plot, the other didn't recognize the plot. And was Jesus caught in his own words, which was what they were trying to do. They were trying to catch Jesus in his own words, which is actually written. In contrast, Herod, he was caught in his own words. He made an oath he was not willing to break. He was caught. He couldn't take it back. He was caught to do something he wouldn't rather do. And you notice Jesus, he said, bring me a silver coin with the head of Caesar on it. John the Baptist is the opposite. Herod is the opposite, I should say. He said, bring me the head of John the Baptist on a silver platter. It's written as a charger in the book, but when you look up the Greek word, it's the same as a silver platter. Bring me the head of John the Baptist. You see the contrast? And Jesus committed no crime in bringing forth that coin and displaying the head of Caesar. Give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and what belongs to God, to God. Jesus had a good conscience in doing that. But Herod, when he had taken the life of John the Baptist, he had committed the crime of murder. It haunted him all his life. And he says here in Mark 6, verse 16, it is John, when Jesus was performing miracles, he thought it was John who had resurrected. It is John whom I have beheaded. He thought he was risen again. He had a bad conscience. He had a bad conscience. And it was interesting that Jesus is the Christ. He was anointed of God at the time and baptized by John the Baptist. Whereas Herod is like the Antichrist, everything opposite. He did everything opposite to Jesus. He's a representative of Rome who murdered John. Very interesting points. So stop sharing that. So let's elaborate a bit on those points. Again, the Pharisees willing to combine forces with the Herodians, supporters of Herod. They were guilty by association. Guilty by association. Do you get that? You know, because they were associating with the people who were guilty of the murder of the greatest of the prophets, which was John the Baptist. Guilty by association. Now the Pharisees come to Jesus to catch him in his words. But Jesus turns the tables on them. And he had the Pharisees ignorantly reenact the crime of Herod. Bring me the head of Caesar on a silver coin, as it were, you know. Bring me the head of the greatest Roman, like the greatest prophet, John the Baptist, in contrast. But the head of the greatest Roman was bought on a coin, Caesar. But Jesus used an inoffensive item, a coin, to condemn the Pharisees. His example was inoffensive. Whereas what Herod had brought out was the most offensive thing, the head of John the Baptist. In contrast, do you see the opposites? Yes. Jesus brought forth a coin with the head of Caesar, a silver coin, how inoffensive. And he brought it forth to condemn the Pharisees, to expose their guilt, having collaborated with the Herodians. Here you're collaborating with the Herodians. And whereas Herod used the most offensive item imaginable, the head of John the Baptist on a silver platter, and it only brought forth condemnation and revulsion upon Herodias. Everyone, even till this day, is revolted by that woman and what she did.
Yep.
So you see the contrasts. How we are to be like Jesus, inoffensive. Inoffensive. Whereas Herod and his crowd, they were offensive to God, the Pharisees included. This tells us we need to be careful who we collaborate with today. Because today there are modern day Herodians, and I want to tell you who they are. There are churches today working to compromise with the modern day antichrists, to compromise with Rome today. And these churches are working to have political power today, like the Pharisees were in those days. They are willing to compromise truth and godliness in the pursuit of worldly power to dominate. When Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world," they want to make the kingdom of Jesus of this world and to dominate. I want to read another verse in Mark. This is another time it was written about Herod. Mark chapter 8, verse 15. I hope you see the contrast I've given between Herod, everything the opposite between Herod and Christ. Herod is a representative of Rome, the Antichrist, and Jesus the opposite. Everything was the opposite what he did. Even though Jesus did give the coin to support Rome, he was not, he was certainly doing the opposite in an inoffensive way. That's what we need to be in the world. Here, in Mark chapter 8, verse 15, we read this. And he charged them, saying, "Take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod." Have you ever heard of that? What is the leaven of Herod? Leaven is an unseen thing, the yeast which works in the bread in an unseen manner. Leaven is the unseen influence of Herod upon the Jews. What was Herod's unseen influence taking hold upon the Jews? He was building an earthly kingdom, he was king of the Jews, was he not? Raised up a magnificent temple, and the Jews looked at the temple and said, "Oh, the temple, it will be forever." Not Oh, and Jesus said, once this temple will be torn down. And they're like, what? That's impossible. The kingdom of Jews on earth will be forever. This is what they thought. And Herod was willing to do whatever it took, whatever crime it took to support to support Rome. He was willing to, gain power by compromise. Whatever simple compromise it took that was necessary. And you see churches the modern day churches, they're willing to compromise whatever it takes to join with worldly power. As a church, we got to know who we really are. And we are not united at all with worldly kingdoms. In Counsels to the Church, it's a book, page 314. I want to share what it says there. I'm not exactly going to read it, but I'll share you the thoughts. You might have read it before. It says the government under which Jesus lived was corrupt and oppressive. On every hand, there were crying abuses, extortion, intolerance, grinding, cruelty. Under Roman government, it was terrible. And then under the Herod as well, Herod, who was a supporter of Rome. Yet the Savior attempted no civil reforms. He attacked no national abuses, nor condemned the national enemies. Jesus did not interfere with the authority and administration of those in power. He who was our example kept aloof from earthly governments, not because he was indifferent to the woes of men, but because the remedy did not lie merely in human external measures. There's no remedy in that. You won't fix anything. To be efficient, the cure must reach men individually. It must regenerate the heart. So what we're about is hard work. It goes on to say that Jesus came to establish his spiritual kingdom on earth. As a church, this is what we are here for. We are here to work for souls around us, to make people, to help people, to make them better people, to make them better characters. Through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in the heart. God has promised to change the heart through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, to change people, to make them better people, to turn them from bad to good, from selfish to unselfish, from hateful people to loving people. God can do this, and this is the type of work we're about, because all we can take to heaven is a godly character, and nothing else from the world. There's no use building up an empire in this world. So we need to know who we are as a people. We need to know who we are and what we stand for, our purpose in the world, to live like Jesus as a blessing for humanity, a continual blessing. As he came in, he moved about among the people. He went among the publicans, the poor people, the common people. He even moved among the rich people, working to help people, to change them, to heal them, working for the benefit of humanity, for the saving of mankind.
Amen.
In his future kingdom. That's what Jesus did, and that's what we are to be about. This is our purpose. Don't become distracted with all the worldly. Most of the Christian churches are trying to get support of the earthly governments. Waste of time, trying to involve themselves and change things like that. That's not our purpose. We need to know our purpose and not become distracted by protesting on the streets or doing anything like that. It's not our purpose.
No.
to change the governments or whatever they're doing, or even to go into the army and think we're going to change things like that. When you think about the wars that have happened over the past, you think, well, what was it all for? You know, World War II, World War I.
Mm.
Now you look at all the countries in Europe, they're all friends. And you think, well, what was it all for? Why did those men die? We're all friends now.
Mm.
What about Vietnam? Great war with America. And now everyone just goes there and we're all friends again.
Right, yeah.
We don't need to get involved in political conflicts because they come and go.
Yeah.
Today we might be enemies, tomorrow we'll be friends. These are not our purpose in the world. This is not our purpose. And we need to follow Jesus in his example and just be sticking to working for souls, for healing of them, physically, spiritually. And this is our purpose as a church. And may we not become distracted like the other churches are, is our prayer and our theme today. Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you, brother. Beautiful.
Amen.
Mm.
Shall we close with